So as you can see, this Kim Sae-eui, Kim Soo-hyun debacle is turning into like the most 5D he said, she said type of chess, because now we got an ex-boyfriend, a husband, Kim Soo-hyun, friends on all sides, just trying to say that their version of the truth is the truth. And it took a little bit of also connecting more of the dots to see, like, why is there so much effort being placed in here? The only thing that I think we cannot think of as true is the stated motivation from everybody, everybody, like stating, like whatever they're stating at the forefront of, like, this is why I'm doing it. Like, unfortunately, like, the family, just an apology, although it can be true. The Mr. Garo Sero man saying, like, they're looking for truth and justice. Kim Soo-hyun, it was just a small, short relationship, and it wasn't about the money. I think those things are the only things that, like, really are not true. Everything else can all be true at once. And this is why this makes it very difficult. So the saving grace for our brains in this case, though, is that each side at least is being extremely clear what team they're on, and they're being very clear about what their story is and how it directly supports Kim Soo-hyun's side or Kim Se-ron's family's side. So we're going to go over a bit of the other players that have made very strong statements in each of these cases. But quickly, why Kim Soo-hyun's side is sus and the family is sus. So the main theme here is that I think now everybody's sus. However, I think everybody does have in their mind a legitimate thing that they're fighting for, but just, us watching, like, everybody looks sus, and all of their sussiness can be sus at the same time, which is what I'm saying. So that we can try to go over these humps where it seems like, wait, but they're saying different stories about the same thing. I think they're saying the same story about the same thing. So why Kim Soo-hyun is sus, there's a strong agenda for him to peel off this label that he was the source of the mental trauma that led Kim Sae-eui to end her life. And why is it even more sussy? Because it did look like he had people coordinated with him in the media, and in particular in this case that Mr. Garo Sero is accusing and the family is accusing Lee Jin-ho of being in the back pocket and coordinating on a takedown. Why the family is sus? People don't believe their real motives. Like, is it just really about an apology? And because they're also aligned with Garo Sero as the de facto spokesperson, and there's a history with that organization of participating in celebrity takedowns as a shakedown for some money. Now, Mr. Garo Sero himself, I have not seen any evidence that he was directly involved in any money shakedowns, but the two other people that he started Garo Sero with definitely have had accusations, some of them proven, a lot of them not, but definitely a lot of documented sussiness around it. So that's why I think, like, they're both being sus here. And the problem with this, and the reason why this makes a K-drama, or actually this is a little bit more complicated than a K-drama, because, with all the twists and plots of a K-drama, that's actually much more simple than, I guess, real Korean life if you look at this type of situation. And usually when you look at, like, you're trying to weigh the, like, what is really going on, there's one theory of Occam's razor, which essentially means, like, it's usually the simplest answer is the right answer, because don't be going into all these, like, subtextual, like, conspiracy theory connections or something like that. Well, sorry, you're trying to do that in Korea, you might not even be able to guard your place in line at the bakery. There's a lot of stuff going on, okay? And in this case, I don't think we can use Occam's razor. Occam's razor, simplest answer being the right answer, really depends on the theory that people are not going to do extra stuff. It's not my job, like why would, so that's why like the simplest thing is usually the motive and the driver. However, especially as we saw with the New Jeans Mama situation, you can't think that just the simplest explanation is the correct explanation, because there's a whole other layer of other people willing to go the extra mile for some other reward that makes sense once we know, oh, that's the reward. Oh, that's why they would want to do it. And so, Korea may be called the land of the morning calm, and it sure is at times, but it's usually because everybody's so tired of the night before, the land of all the hidden agendas. Where am I throwing out Occam's razor as like, oh, the simplest answer is the answer? Because I never was very convinced of like, what is this about between Mr. Garo Sero and Lee Jin-ho? This looks like, at first I was like, is this a competition thing? They're sort of somewhat in the same space, but not really. Are they just like competitive? Oh no, they have had a history. They have had such a huge contested history that you're just like, okay, keep them away from each other, because if they ever meet, they're going to blow up. And we don't even have to put this in theory, because it actually happened a couple days ago where they actually physically met for the first time, but they have been warring against each other for years. We'll get into their little conflict at a restaurant that Kim Sae-eui really liked going to, and both sides, Lee Jin-ho's side and also Mr. Garo Sero, were supposed to not meet, but I guess the meetings got overlapped. They were both trying to meet with the owner of this restaurant, because this owner of the restaurant had heard a lot from Kim Sae-eui, because she was always there eating and drinking and pouring her heart out. So he was definitely on the Kim Sae-eui side, Kim Sae-eu's family side, Mr. Garo Sero's side. So that's where, like, they clashed like there was some like Gangnam ajummas, debating over where they got married on the wrong side of the river. But what is the actual thing between these two guys that is just making this drama more about the clashing media personalities versus the actual thing about Kim Soo-hyun? Remember, it's like, oh, I thought we were talking about Kim Soo-hyun versus Kim Sae-eui. Well, this goes all the way back to a scandal involving Kim Gun-mo. Kim Gun-mo is a very famous singer, and back in 2019, Garo Sero Research Institute, when they had the three founders in full force, were reporting that Kim Gun-mo was like a essayer of females, especially at these nighttime drinking establishments. It even went towards, like, because of the reporting, it even went towards like the prosecutor's office. But after 2 years, the prosecution closed the case and said that Kim Gun-mo had been falsely accused. So was this about like this false accusation? Was that the big problem? Not really. It was a situation where then another like media personality guy had come out and said, although I haven't seen like whether it was 100% verified, but come out and said that Garo Sero was being shady, and not Mr. Garo Sero now in particular, one of his colleagues, and not the one that offed himself off, the hotel balcony in Busan, but this other guy, saying that this witness said that Garo Sero's like Mr. Kang is a little bit shady, because I have seen this coordinated thing where Garo Sero, Mr. Kang, would go to the victim and align with the victim, say that they're going to take down this celebrity in the press and force him into a settlement. And they're going after people who are rich. So, they're saying like, oh, this Mr. Kang from Garo Sero was saying like, oh, Kim Gun-mo has 2 buildings. I'm going to take one of them. So what the game would be is that you shake down through the power of the media. And then also, hey, it helps that you're also a lawyer knowing how to do settlements at the same time. Shake down a celebrity into a settlement. And then it looks like they're paying the victim, but they're also going to give a cut to the entertainment journalist who's essentially doing blackmail. And so this was not the only situation where the other 2 dudes from Garo Sero, no, like right now, the guy with the red bandana, I would say like he's completely innocent. He's the good guy. He, kicked out the shady blackmail journalist from his company. Okay, we'll give him that. But those 2 had been really accused in other situations, like another case of going to Hong Kong and trying to shake down like a financier for millions of dollars, and then also accuse him of like essay and all this kind of stuff. And the text messages showed that, Mr. Khan, because he's a lawyer, he's like, well, saying like the possibilities of like, if it was murder, if it was rape, it was like, like it's kind of, oh my God, just like going through the laundry list of like the probabilities and then, how that would affect the amount of the settlement. Although at the same time, I haven't seen anything where it was like completely convicted, where he had been guilty. Same thing with the dude that kind of offed himself. I haven't seen it yet. I haven't dug around that deeply, but is there that sort of format? Is there essentially a business model for that type of situation? And it looks like there is. So I don't know exactly what Lee Jin-ho's beef was to trigger. Essentially, it looked like because Lee Jin-ho is close to celebrities, these guys at Garo Sero touched, one too many of the celebrities that he is close to. And so Mr. Lee Jin-ho, back in 2021, had his own little investigation thing. It was actually 2020. He not only reported, he submitted a complaint to the Seoul Central District Prosecutor's Office requesting an investigation into now this one does involve Mr. Garo Sero man, who is in charge, last man standing over at Garo Sero, for violating the act on punishment, prostitution, mediation. He essentially accused Mr. Garo Sero of visiting a nighttime establishment in Busan and using the company card to then, not just have some drinks, but, some milk and cookies along with, this whole thing. And so I could see how, my goodness, Lee Jin-ho went after Mr. Garo Sero, but then Lee Jin-ho might have thought Garo Sero, you've been going after my friends and people and blackmailing everybody. That's also not right. So this has some moving drama underneath the placid waters. Oh, there are a lot of riptide currents going on. So that's why also there's an incentive, it seems, for both sides, to be going after this very aggressively. So what was the clash over at this nice little restaurant / bar? It's in Apgujeong Rodeo. That used to be a very hot place, especially in the Y2K era. It's kind of still a hot place, but is really struggling. So Mr. Garo Sero says hey, go visit this place. It's really cool. It's really good. The food is good. And apparently Kim Sae-eui and her friends really liked to go there. And so the owner, who's seen in this photo, the owner knows a lot about this situation and can be another strong voice either way. The owner is inclined to essentially, and from we've seen this secretly recorded conversation by the owner himself, shows that he is very much aligned with Kim Sae-eui, of course, because he had a close relationship with her and the family. He said he knew of the family, but he wasn't like friends with like the family. He was essentially getting, heard like all of the heartbreak of Kim Sae-eui whenever she went there. Now, what was going on in this situation before the blow up between the two YouTubers happened at the end? So in the beginning, we saw that the owner looks like he was probably like, okay, 2 p.m. Lee Jin-ho, your team comes visit me, we'll talk. And then 4 p.m., Mr. Garo Sero, you come. But then they clashed. So who showed up was Lee Jin-ho and also this forensics guy, and Kwak Tae-young was supposed to be there, and he is the guy that was on the phone calls that really showed like, oh, Kim Sae-eui got married in New York, and maybe that's why that she's in a bad mental state, as of January. This guy, though, is friends, and even Lee Jin-ho from his mouth has said he is friends with Kim Sae-eun's manager. But this dude is very much aligned with Kim Soo-hyun somehow, but not officially, at least they're saying, as part of that agency. So Garo Sero's side is essentially accusing this Mr. Kwak manager of being a mole. Basically being a spy on Kim Sae-eui and reporting back to the Kim Soo-hyun side. And so it looked like these people wanted to go and convince this owner of this restaurant to, not talk crap about Kim Soo-hyun, essentially. But this owner of this restaurant was just very skeptical. He's basically saying like, okay, well, were these phone calls faked? First of all, because a lot of you guys said like that phone call between the manager and Kim Sae-eui sounded fake. There's like some netizen analysis on the recording, and so that let that be, and we'll prove that. But from what the words out of the mouth of these people, Lee Jin-ho is saying like, no, that was not a fake recording. I did not make that recording fake, and here I have a digital forensics guy to back me up on it. But then at the same time, the owner was like, okay, well, that's also bad too. Okay, let's just say it's real. Why would this guy record this phone call in the first place? And how'd you get it? And why did you release it to the world? That's a little sus. And then Lee Jin-ho is saying like, well, the manager who I'm friends with, even though the manager recorded this conversation, he didn't give it to me. And then they made it very like vague, like, oh, he must have given it to the agency, and maybe the agency gave it to Lee Jin-ho. So see, that right there is super sus. And so I don't even know like how they thought that they can convince this owner to like stay quiet or whatnot. But they met together, and then the key elements that came out of this conversation, which we do have a phone record. Okay, so he did record too, right? So he recorded and then gave it to Mr. Garo Sero man, who released it to the world. And so the important part of this situation, right, because all of it is about like, is Kim Soo-hyun the reason for Kim Sae-eui to take her life? And this guy, who's the owner, said that he thinks it's 70% Kim Soo-hyun, 25% Lee Jin-ho for, doing these hit pieces, and 5% Mr. New York. Now we'll get into it. You've probably already heard, but Kim Soo-hyun's side, over the past few days was very convincing in saying like, oh, her crazy secret marriage to this like shotgun wedding husband, like he was so abusive, he's the one that gave her the mental stress to go over the edge. Well, this owner guy seems to be very credible in the sense that like, no, I don't think that's 5% Mr. New York. She been coming here yapping 70% Kim Soo. He's probably like thinking in his mind, all right, what was she talking about the most? 70% Kim Soo-hyun, 25% Lee Jin-ho, and then 5% Mr. New York. And he also was, I don't know, he must be a poet too, but he was also saying like, it was very hard for Kim Sae-eui because she was sort of like the empress in that that Kim Soo-hyun's world. Like if he was the king and then she's like the main empress, but it was very difficult for Kim Sae-eui because Mr. King Kim Soo-hyun had a lot of concubines, had a lot of mistresses, had a lot of thought things, and that it was difficult for her, but she held on, says the owner, that because she was promised marriage. So she was just holding on, and putting up with stuff because of that. And so then that again paints Kim Soo-hyun in a very bad light, that he was literally using Kim Sae-eui, didn't fulfill his promises and just threw her away. This owner guy was spilling all of the exact things that wondering about. Well, he was spilling. So I don't know if this was a setup, okay? Because if you're thinking like totally the opposite of Occam's razor, like the simplest answer being the right answer, this could also be a performance too. If you're being skeptical of the owner as well. But if you're not being skeptical and you just want to hear what the owner had said, he said that, Sae-ron was Kim Soo-hyun's Achilles heel, and that it seemed like to him that Kim Soo-hyun wanted to get rid of Kim Sae-eui as a threat. Like exactly what's going on. Like had she been living and then spilling all the beans. And even, with her gone, look at how devastating this has been to Kim Soo-hyun. He also was just like basically recalling what she said about this world. So that manager set her up with the new agency, and she never said anything bad about that manager, but said a lot of bad things about Lee Jin-ho, he said. And when in particular was when in January, there was a broadcast by Lee Jin-ho apparently kind of painting Kim Sae-eui as Delulu again, because when she had posted those photos of her in New York that said Mary, which was essentially the New York husband posting it, like kind of hacking into her Instagram account and posting it, and then, kind of making it like, there she go again, like pretending she's in relationships with random guys she has photos with. And apparently she was so heartbroken there. And then the owner was like, when she doesn't answer her phone, I go, I know where she lives. I knock on her door to make sure she's okay. And she said that he said that she was very upset a lot with Lee Jin-ho. And then the owner was like, okay, Lee Jin-ho, why don't you have any videos on Kim Soo-hyun? And then Lee Jin-ho was like, oh, it's not an issue of making them, but I'm in a life and death situation. And this is when Mr. Garo Sero man leaps into the restaurant. And Mr. Garo Sero man, I'm sure he educated, but he was, acting like, he's definitely from the wrong side of the river. And he was like, why aren't you answering the phone? Because he was calling the owner, basically like, okay, probably confirming, or should I come now? And he wasn't answering the phone because the phone was, in his hoodie recording the conversation. So he couldn't answer the phone. So Mr. Garo just probably, took it into his own volition to go. And then he's like, what? That's Lee Jin-ho. And then apparently it sounded like Mr. Garo Sero started taking pictures of Lee Jin-ho. So this is why I almost think like, is this a setup or was this actually just a coincidence? We don't know. But if we're just believing Occam's razor, the simplest answer being the right answer, then he was just taking photos of Lee Jin-ho, and Lee Jin-ho was like, why are you taking photos? Don't take photos. And then Mr. Garo Sero was like, who are you then? Who are you? Oh, this is the first time I met you. And then Lee Jin-ho was like, yeah, it's been a while. And then Mr. Garo Sero was like, been a while? Have we ever met? So apparently they never met in person ever, but they definitely knew about each other. And then, of course, it's going into the favorite way of trying to, rooster cock your way in a situation like, why are you speaking in a informal tone to me? Like, 반말이야? And they were just like arguing over like, who said, who was using the casual tone first.
누구세요? 누구세요? 알아? 알잖아. 아는 사람이야? 아, 처음 보네. 오랜만입니다. 처음 봤어요? 얼마하네. 어디 반말이야? 너가 반말했잖아. 내가 반말했어? 반말했잖아. 오랜만입니다라고 했잖아요. 언제 봤어요, 나를?
And then he's like, no, like you started with the whole 반말, and I just said it's been a while, very politely in the formal version, and then Mr. Garo Sero like flipped it around, so it's like, what are you talking about? It's been a while. You ever seen me? And then Lee Jin-ho was like, I guess in passing, and then he's like, Mr. Garo's like, in passing, so you've been stalking me? Oh my god. And then Lee Jin-ho started to try to be a little bit more classy and demure, I guess, saying like, why are you doing this? I saw you on the broadcast. That's what I mean. And then Mr. Garo Sero was like, so seeing me on screen is like meeting me? I've never seen you. And then Lee Jin-ho was like, well, okay, that's fine. Why are you losing your temper? I didn't get mad at you. And then Mr. Garo Sero was like, I have no desire to talk to you. And then he's like to Mr. B, he's like, okay, let's meet. So dramatic, so, I don't know, a little weird. But that's what I'm saying, is that there's more to this. They have beef with each other that has been simmering like a real slow pot roast for like 3 or 4 years.